Hi, my name is Beth and I'm the sewing pattern designer and blogger at Sew DIY. In today's video, I'm going to talk about finishing seams. So when we say finish a seam or neaten a seam, we mean do some sort of technique or treatment to the edges of the fabric so that it doesn't fray. So when you sew two pieces of fabric together, you're going to have these raw edges. And if you don't finish them, then they're going to fray apart and eventually your garment might just fall apart. So it's really important to treat these raw edges so that they don't fray and so that you have a long-lasting garment. You know, you've put all this time into your clothing, making it yourself. It's really important to make sure that it lasts a long time. Thoughts? So today I'm going to show you 7 of the most popular methods. Which one you choose will depend on your project and your fabric and just what you prefer to do. So let's get started. So the first option is to use a tool called pinking shears. And you might have seen these kinds of scissors before. There are some that are designed for paper, like for scrapbooking projects. But then there are some that are designed specifically for fabric, and they will cut through fabric really nicely. And let's just do that. So it's a really beautiful little zigzag edge. So the way that this prevents the fraying is that when you have a bias edge on your fabric, it's less likely to fray than your straight of grain edges. So the little zigzag cuts create a whole bunch of bias edges. Now, pinking shears can be a little bit expensive to purchase. I think maybe $25 or so. So they're not absolutely necessary because you can also use your sewing machine to do a lot of these finishes. But they're a really nice thing to have around as another option for finishing. So I want to actually show you a garment that I used pinking shears on. I probably made this 2 years ago, and you can see the pinked edges there, and on these seams I think they're really pretty, and this is a very lightweight fabric and it's underlined, but you can see that there's a little bit of fraying going on. So if you use pinking shears, you might want to do some tests with it and just do it on a garment that you're going to treat really gently. So the next option is something that should be pretty accessible to everyone who has a regular sewing machine, and this is a zigzag stitch. This is probably the first finishing stitch that I ever learned, and kind of like our pinking shears, it makes a little zigzag on your fabric, so you can zigzag right at the edge of the fabric or right inside it and then trim it closer. And so this will prevent the threads from fraying any farther than that top edge of your zigzag stitch. So like most machines have this, it's a really easy, convenient one to try out. Another stitch that your machine might have is an overlock stitch. Mine probably has at least 3 or 4, even my really affordable brother's CS 6000i machine had probably like 3 different overlock stitches. So here's an example of one of those overlock stitches, and this kind of simulates what a serger would do, but it just uses the 2 threads. So when I think about whether I would want to use this kind of stitch or not, I usually get a scrap of the fabric I'm sewing and then just test out some stitches and see which one looks the nicest, which one the fabric kind of reacts to best. Another stitch that you can do is if you have a serger, and this is probably my favorite way to finish edges. And your serger will use 3 to 4 threads, and it creates this overcast stitch, which is like really sturdy, like it's not going to fray, the stitches aren't going to come apart. I really love this. It looks really professional. Again, you might not have a serger. It's a little bit more of an investment when you are more committed to sewing. I definitely recommend getting one, and I have a I have a bunch of videos about using a serger, so I recommend checking those out. Another finishing seam, which is really lovely, is a French seam. And a French seam will actually enclose the raw edges inside another seam. So you sew the seam twice, which does take a lot longer, and personally I find it really aggravating that it takes so long, but it's so beautiful. It's really worth the extra time to make a really beautiful garment. So here's another example of a garment, and this one has a French seam. So this is the inside, and you can see that there are no raw edges visible. It's really lovely. There are tons of tutorials online about how to do a French seam. I'll probably do one at some point too. I really recommend learning how to do this because it's a really nice way to finish really delicate fabrics. This is a silk fabric, so it's just something that I wouldn't want to throw through my serger and like have it go through all those needle punches. So French seam is really great for a really nice silk garment like this. Another finish is to bind the edge with bias tape. So I've actually done two different kinds of finishes in this garment. And on this center back seam, I did the bias bound edge. And this is just another really lovely way to finish your seams. Again, lots of tutorials online on how to do this. The seventh and final option that I'm going to talk about today is the clean finish. This is not one that I've used a whole lot, but it is really beautiful. And all it is you sew the seam and then you fold the seam allowance in and you top stitch it right down. So I did it on the facing of this shirt and I really like how it turned out. So here's the wrong side of the facing and here's the right side, and it's really held up well. It's not fraying. And it's a really clean finish on the inside. Well, I hope that you enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button and then hit the little bell to be notified next time I release a new video. Happy sewing!